Okay. $2.5 midpoints. What do you think a midpoint is? What do you think it's in the middle of, if geometry? Middle of, how about 2 points? Or, what you guys said, a line segment? Is that what you said? Or a line segment? It's a point right in the middle. And at the end of each segment are 2 points, correct? So midpoint's right in the middle. So, what do you think happens as a result if I say this? M is the midpoint of AB. What am I saying? What do you think I could then say? What if I told you this? The distance from here to here was 10. As a result, what'd you say you say? The distance from here to here is what? 5. And what's the distance from here to here? When two things are the same distance, what do we say they are in geometry? Or same size? So this is congruent to what? So as a result, I could say segment AM is what? Congruent to segment what? B. Or the distance from A to M is equal to the distance from what? M to B. Probably didn't need me to tell you that, did you? Well, I did anyway. But the thing is, if I hadn't have put the numbers in here, would you have gotten to that conclusion? Might have had a little tougher time. Sometimes you might find that it's smart to, put numbers for something and then answer the questions with the numbers, because in your mind, you probably knew that that was right in the middle, so halfway, right in the halfway point, right? Meaning that and that are the same distance. But until you put the numbers in there, it was harder to come to this conclusion, wasn't it? And that's what we're here for. Try to help you come to the correct conclusion and push you in the right direction. However, so you understand what the midpoint is. Well, we're going to learn how to do two things. One, midpoint on a number line. I guess underneath here say midpoint between 2 points. We're going to have a formula. Here's your formula. That's where the midpoint's always going to be. X1 plus X2 divided by 2. What do I mean by that? Well, isn't, and don't draw this number line, I just want you to look at it. Because we're going to have some examples so you don't have to write this down. But just so you understand this right here, if I wanted the midpoint between B and C, why did I make this 6? That was dumb. -1, -2, -3, -4. That a little better? Okay. What if I said I wanted the midpoint between B and C? Well, you guys would probably say, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4 is the distance, right? So what's the exact midpoint? Right there, isn't it? That would be the midpoint. And like I said, don't write this down, just listen. But how would I use a formula for that? I write the coordinate of 1 down. What is the coordinate of B? -1 plus, what is the coordinate of C? And then I divide by? What is -3 plus 3? 2. Divided by 2, what is that? That's the coordinate of the midpoint. Isn't that where it is? Right there? So you see what I'm saying? That's how you find the coordinate of midpoint when it's just on a number line. Okay, yes?
Coach, why did it say in the book, it says 0 midpoint formula for a number line, it says A plus B by 2.
Does it too?
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay.
I'll put or what? A plus B divided by 2?
Yeah.
Okay. They just used a different variable than I did. I'm using this because to me this is the x-coordinate. A number line is always the x-axis. Remember we did yesterday? Isn't a number line just the x-axis, not the y? So it's basically your left and right value. Any questions on that? We okay? Now, what about the midpoint? Between 2 points on the x, y coordinate plane. I'm going to write mine a little different. Your x-coordinate of your midpoint is always the y-coordinate of your midpoint is always y1 plus y2 over 2. It's the same thing we just did, except we just include the what? The y's. So everybody get that worksheet out. Let's jump down to number 7. Has everybody got that written down? Okay, let me give you a second then. Okay, look at number 7. The coordinates of the endpoints of the segment are given. Find the coordinates of the midpoint of each segment. Well, I want to find this right here, don't I? How do I find it? To find the x-coordinate, what do I do?
We'll put them in for 2.
I add the x's, and I could think of it like this. Add the x's, and then what? Divide by. So everybody look, don't write, and I'll let you write it. What are my x-coordinates right here? So we could say that's x1 and that's x2, right? So to find the x-coordinate, I would basically do what? I'd say 2 plus what? Divided by. Okay, now how am I going to find the y-coordinate? I'm going to add my what? Y's and then divide by. So what are my 2 y's? So 4 plus what? Then divided by. What is 2 plus 6? Divided by 2? Okay. 4 plus 8 is what? Divided by 2? There's the midpoint. It's really not too bad, is it? For number 8, what's the only thing that changed? And I do want to see this. I want to see that you know how to put it into the formula. What's the only thing that changed? The points, right? So, to find the x-coordinate of the midpoint, everybody look up here. I'll freeze it and let you write it down. What are my x-coordinates? 6 and what? So I would do what? Divided by? What are my y-coordinates? So 4 plus what? Divided by? So my midpoint is at where? 6 plus 2 is 8, divided by 2 is 4 again. 4, 7 in that case. Keep looking up here. Let's go. I'll push this up, and then I'll zoom in here in a second, and you can write it down. To find the midpoint here. What would I do? What are my x's? So 9 plus or what? Divided by what? What's my other one? 3 plus 1 divided by? What do I get? 9 plus negative 3 is what? Divided by 2 is? 3 plus 1 is? Divided by 2? That's not too terrible, is it? Now, like I said, I'll zoom back out. If you go back up here to these, they want you to find the midpoint of L to T. What are the coordinates of L? Plus, what are the coordinates of T? Everybody look, don't write. Divided by, what are the coordinates of the midpoint? 5 over what? Which is 2 and 1/2. It's not too bad, is it? J to L, what are the coordinates of J? Plus, what are the coordinates of L? Divided by? I expect to see that part every time. It doesn't take that long to write it down and show me you're doing the work and you know what you're doing. Now, this is what we have those calculators to do fractions for. The coordinates of L is what? 1. Plus, the coordinates of R is what? 2.5. Divided by what? So that's 3.5 over 2. Well, if you were to do this by hand, which I will do, I need to change that to 7 over 2 over 2. You can't divide fractions, so you've got to change the division into multiplication. So instead of this being 2 over 1, to divide by 2 over 1 is the same thing as to multiply by its reciprocal, which is 1 over 2. So this becomes, your answer is 7 over 4, which is 1 3/4. Or you could just get a calculator, like I said, that does that for you.
What kind of calculator is it?
They'll have an A, B over C button. And most of your scientific calculators will all leave your answers a fraction if you want them to. For today, I guess, but for the most part, you need to start getting used to, you know what I mean? Right, if you don't start with a decimal, don't end with one. But for this assignment, I'll be okay with it. C and J. -4 plus, what's J?
0.
Over 2. You got -4 over 2, what is that? -2? And was it that hard to write down that little bit to prove to me you know what you're doing? If you do know what you're doing, it's not a big deal. Okay? And by the way, if you have a smartphone, there's fraction calculators. Just do a search in the App Store for fraction calculator. There's a free one for Android and for iOS. Okay? Now, let's go down here to what is probably the hardest one, which is number well, it's number 14. And like I said, I'll zoom out and freeze on it all so you can write it all down as soon as we're done. Okay, first things first, where's the midpoint of this? Well, what's weird about this? What have they done? Put in what? X's and all that stuff. Doesn't change here. Your midpoint is still going to be add your X's. What are your X's in right here and here? 4x plus what? Over what? Comma. What are your 2y plus what? No. Very good. Over 2. Not to pick on you, but you're really not almost right if you say positive 2y here, right? Because that's the exact opposite of 2y, isn't it? Negative 2y? You guys wouldn't be happy if I said, hey, I'm going to give you $100, and then I showed up the next day and did the opposite, took $100 from you, would you? You know what I mean? So make sure you pay attention to those details. There's no, that we all make that mistake. I mean, I'm not, it's just, when someone makes that mistake, it's always good to kind of bring up that point that you got to realize, you know, you're exactly on the whole other spectrum wrong. Okay? Now, 4x plus 0 is what? Over 2, comma. What's 2y plus a negative 2y? 0 over 2. Well, anything over 0 over this would just be what? 0. What is 4x divided by 2? Guess what? There's where the midpoint is. Last example. Okay. If R is the midpoint of xy, and R is at the coordinates 8, 3, x has the coordinates 10, 5. Find the coordinates for y. How is this different than the one I just did? Up here I gave you the two what? Endpoints, and asked you to find the what? On this problem, you know, you've basically got some line here, right? And they gave you R, which is your midpoint, right? And then they gave you X, which is this other point. This is the other one they're wanting you to find. Okay? Does that make sense? Watch. It's important you watch and not write here. This one is weird for this reason. This is why I like to define it like this, because you need to think to find y, you're going to need to find the endpoint, and you're going to need to find the y coordinate of each endpoint and the x coordinate of the endpoint. Okay, this is what we do basically to find the midpoint, the x coordinate of the midpoint. Is that correct? Everyone agree with that? Well, this is the x coordinate of what? The midpoint right here, isn't it? They gave us that, right? This is the y coordinate of what? The midpoint. X we could say is x1, right? And 5 we could say is y1. What did they not give me? If we're looking at this formula up here, they didn't give me what? x2 and what? Right. So they gave you a number for this, they gave you a number for this, and they want you to find that. So what you've got to do is use some algebra here and just plug in what you know and then solve for that. Now, what do we know the x coordinate of the midpoint is? What is it in our case here? So I would put that in right there, right? Everyone agree? Now, what about this? That's equal to the x-coordinate, x1, which is this right here, so I would put that in right there, right? So I'll say 10 plus, and do I know anything for that one? So how about I make that just x? Is that okay? All of that divided by what? Do you see how this is the same as this, just with the correct numbers written in? Don't write, watch. Does that make sense? Anybody have a question about that, why I did that? It's okay if you do. Once again, they gave us what? The midpoint, and they gave us 1 point. We got to find the other point. So the question is, how do I solve for x right here? Guys, when you have a problem like this where there's only a lot under a fraction, there's only one fraction, you know the easiest thing to do? Keep the equation balanced and multiply both sides by whatever your denominator is. And in this case, it's what? If I multiply everything on the right side by 2, what happens? Leaving just what? 10 plus what? But if I multiply the right side by 2, I've got to multiply the left side by 2, making this what? Now, does that look like an easy equation to solve? What would I do next? X is equal to what? So, y, we know the x-coordinate now is what? 6, right? What's the only thing left to find? The y now. So now, I'm going to do the same thing I did here, except I'm going to do it over here and put the y's in. What is the y-coordinate of my midpoint? Huh? 3 is equal to, what's the y1? Isn't it 5? I put that in. Oops, I didn't make my line very good, did I? Right there, right? Plus, do I know what the other y is? Divided by what? Now, can I do the same thing I did over here? Multiply everything by 2. What happens here? 2 times 3. What would I do now? That's just 1. There you go. All right, everybody write that down in your notes. Since that was a made-up problem that went with that one. Oh, darn it, I forgot to make it big screen. So when you watch this video, you'll have the whole thing in the background, but oh well, better than nothing.